gavel. That sounds good. Welcome everybody to this special work session where we're going to be discussing emergency services, stormwater, and general services. So I'll turn it over to Eric to make any opening comments before we start going down the line here.
You really hit it. This is our fourth and final work session where we're going through projects, and we will take you through those. We've got three categories to cover this afternoon, and that, as the mayor said, that includes emergency services, stormwater, and general services. Just to let you know a couple things that will relate to both a specific element of this and our overall process. Tomorrow evening at our work session, we'll be providing the board with a presentation review of the stormwater fund overall. That's something we talked about a few months ago, and our finance team, Michael Walters-Young, helped lead that effort, has taken a look at the structure of the fund and those different elements, and we'll be walking through that tomorrow as well in the work session. And then we anticipate bringing to you for discussion at the work session on November 27th, just sort of an overview of where we are in terms of financial model and how that relates to capital investment projects. So I'll touch on that, all of that probably again at the end as we look at what's going forward, but just those are important elements that will relate to everything we're doing going forward. So I think we'll just take it by category. We've got emergency services, followed by stormwater, followed by our general services group. So who's leading off emergency services? Is that you? Probably. Deputy Chief Andy King will take that on.
Good afternoon. Filling in for Chief Horton this afternoon. Sorry he's not able to attend. And then Brad Wilson's also here to talk about Station 7 and an update on that. And we'll be happy to answer any questions as we move through the slide presentation. So as we know, for roughly the 10-year period that we have 9 or 10 fire department capital improvement projects that are proposed. One of those has already been approved. If you move forward to Station 7, which is shown. And Brad, do you want to give us an update on where we are on Station 7?
I can. We had a mandatory pre-bid meeting. I like to do it like a mandatory meeting. That way we know who's looking to bid the project. We had a meeting this past week. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock, I've offered all the GCs that are bidding it. We currently have 5 GCs that will be on the bid to go and tour Station 8. So they have
What's the GC?
General contractor.
Thank you.
So they have a very good understanding of what Station 7 we hope for it to look like. So we're meeting there at 2 o'clock to kind of give them a little showing of what we do now. Bids are due on the 20th. Currently we've sent out, I think, 1 addendum. May have another one fixing to go out. We'll see how many questions we have coming through, and if we need to move the date, we can move it to the following Monday or Tuesday, but right now they know we're looking for the 20th at 2 o'clock.
Eric, on any of these, leave these out of any of the top 10 that we're picking. Yes. They've already been approved.
Yes, specifically 7 is approved and is anticipated for funding through your facilities tax fund. So that project this is really more of an update than anything. That's moving forward, and we would expect to begin construction on Fire Station 7 early part of 2019.
Great. Any other questions about Station 7? Great. And then we'll skip forward 2 additional slides. And then, Michael, do you want to cover that one that's larger that has the 700 million number on there?
Sure.
That's everything.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is a standard slide that will actually be repeated 3 times in this presentation. But as you know, the total in your books for FY19 through 2028 is $710.5 million worth of projects. There are 143 of them across all areas, all potential funding sources. For emergency services, these are all pertaining to the fire department. There are 9 projects, 10 if you count Fire Station 7, which has already been accounted for, totaling $30 million. 2 new stations, 3 remodels, 2 new facilities, and 1 improvement of existing infrastructure. And to that end, Deputy Chief King will go through each of them.
Okay, we'll start at the top. Fire Station 9, which is for the east side of Franklin, and that was proposed for the Smith property potential annexation in that area. As you know, we only have 2 stations that are east of I-65. That'd be Station 6 on Cool Springs Boulevard, and then Station 7 all the way down at Paytonsville Road. And so there's an identified need out 96 East regardless for a station in that general vicinity. And of course, a large annexation in that area of existing urban growth boundary or annexation could prompt that. Any,
So the Paynesville Road, so you really don't have one east of 65.
right, Station 7 actually is east of 65, just barely, but it's very much
The new
south.
one.
Far south.
The new one that they're just talking
Yeah.
about.
Right.
But Station 7's not,
Cool Springs.
Well, we've got a temporary Station 7
Well,
that's in the
that's-
same
yeah.
location,
True.
essentially. It's just a
True.
little bit north of the
No.
the permanent site.
You're talking about south of 96.
Right, and really
There's
east,
north of
east out 96
96.
East.
We have one.
We have one on 96 East at McHatcher, and then Station 6 at Cool Springs
Yeah,
Boulevard.
Station 6.
And that leaves basically a gap from Paytonsville Road all the way to Cool Springs Boulevard is covered by either Station 2 or 6
Yeah.
for the most part.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then Station 10, this is on our 10-year list because we recognize that when McHatcher is extended through and it crosses roughly Carter's Creek Pike, that area within the UGB could necessitate, based on response time, of a new station. That's why this one is on that list.
Where would that be?
Carter's
In the-
Creek Pike, it said.
I'm sorry?
Carter's Creek Pike, it said.
Yes, Carter's Creek Pike, near where the proposed McHatcher would cross.
Oh, where it would cross, okay.
In that general vicinity, there's not a specific location as of today.
Well, would that be to serve that new wonderful development that's going out there? At
There's
South
several-
Hall,
South,
Hall.
that, yeah,
It-
that's in the county.
That's
The
in the
county,
county.
yeah.
We
the
have
county, but-
reciprocal services.
I know it is, but I know that's the county, but that's Carter's Creek Pike.
Mhm. County.
But Carter's Creek Pike goes a long way, stop and think about that. But both of these are really
Yeah,
are
it goes
based
to
on
Columbia.
projected annexations, right?
Right.
Yes.
They really, right
Yeah.
now,
The future.
yeah, it's really future.
Yeah,
That's
that-
what we're
that-
talking
that's
about for
exactly
both of
right.
these.
Annexation will drive both of these.
That's right.
Also, as you look at annexation, you look at specific potential development plans,
Mhm.
we always will ask about potential site dedications. That's part of the discussion as we did with Fire Station 8. You can expect we would have the same kind of discussions around the nature of that annexation and that development itself, if that presents an opportunity to get sites dedicated that could then work in terms of Fire Station.
And how long did it take to get the one at West Haven after West Haven has been in?
Yeah, it took a little while. That's right, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, the third one on your list is Fire Station 3 upgrades. And as you know, that's one of our smaller stations. It only has 2 bays right now. So that station is at Seaboard Lane and
Yeah,
Mallory Station.
Mallory Station.
Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah.
Little brain freeze for just a moment. And it's a very busy station right now, and so it's anticipated that as Cool Springs continues to grow with the number of apartments and just everything that's going on in that general vicinity, as it gets busier and busier,
Yeah.
there could be demand for an additional bay, and that lot is pretty well built out right now, and so I think it's generated a lot of internal discussion as to what could happen there. And so is that an addition? Is that a relocation to a more logical spot that helps overall response? Or is it some type of combined facility with other agencies such as EMS or even Brentwood that helps best serve the community?
How old
And-
is that? How old?
How old? 1994, 92, 94?
Maybe,
25 years, something like that.
Yeah.
A question, quick.
Yes.
Is this station
lots at
answer
sea.
a lot of the trauma on 65? Do they,
It does. Station 6 and 3 both respond up to Moore's Lane, then go, Station 3 will go south from Moore's Lane on 65, and depending on which direction it is.
Yeah, okay,
But it also covers a lot of the assisted living facilities that are all on that side of,
true.
Good
up to
point.
Cool Springs Boulevard as well.
Station 3.
Yes.
So I think that's something we need to keep in mind as far as priority then.
Okay. The new fire training center, in our 10-year projection, if we continue to grow, as we're growing, the fire training center really needs an expansion or potential relocation on the existing site. And so in our discussion there is, what's the best use of that facility, that space, in conjunction with everything else that the city's doing? And so we recognize that regardless of what that looks like, that we definitely need to be planning on that right now. The training facility's in use every single day, 5, sometimes 6 days a week for
You're talking about the
police
one-
and fire both.
You're talking about the one off Century Court there? That-
Yes.
So, may I ask then, do you see in the future that you would need to move out of that location and move somewhere else?
I don't think that's our intent. I think the location is great because it's still inside of Mac Hatcher and it's easy for everybody to get to. It allows us to get in and out, and I think that's what the long-term plan has been, is to, along with solid waste, or sanitation environmental services, is to be able to get in and out of that facility and still have it a heavy industrial area.
Okay, that's fine, but I think the reason I'm asking, because I'm looking at priorities, what do you see that solid waste would have expansion needs there that would kick you all out of that area to another area? Is that a possibility, or do you think we're okay there?
You could. One of the other things you'll see in general services is we're reworking areas around the roadway network and the stormwater, and, there's always going to be increased demands. There's a combination of expanding needs for all the training aspects and just what we've got there to work with. We've looked at the potential for a BOPA site at some point too. So there are multiple demands that could impact how we use that space.
And also, do we train, the reason I'm asking is just for prioritizing needs. So do we train other municipalities at ours, and do we see that increasing, the need to increase that, and do we get paid for that?
That, if we do train them, that's not the reason for the increase. That would happen at different times, but specifically, we do have other firefighters that fill out our firefighter training classes. So they may come and attend, but it's not to the point that that's the reason we're needing
Okay.
expansion.
All right, thanks.
But they do pay their way as well.
They do.
When
Okay.
when we accept
thought so.
outside departments, they do
Okay,
contribute to that as well.
thanks.
Okay, moving on to the next one would be safety rooms for fire stations 1 through 6. 7 and 8 were both, or 7 will be constructed with, and 8 has some form of a safe room, meaning primarily for structural tornado hazards, because these are critical facilities and we want them to be as ready to, the personnel to be protected and/or the apparatus to be able to get out and respond after the emergency and not become a casualty. So those are retrofits we've identified in our long-term strategic plan.
Is that total, 120, or is that 120 per site?
Brad, do you know that answer?
I don't know the answer, but based on the cost and kind of what they're thinking about doing, we're probably within line of that 120.
Total.
For a total, as it's just a modification to the Bay Area.
Next item on your list is prioritized as 4, but it's a safety education village. And we have talked a little bit about this as we've seen surplus property throughout the city, and we know there's always a high interest there. And so we're continually looking for a way to partner potentially with another group to create a facility where students can go and learn. Right now, we presently take our family safety house trailer to each of the first grade classrooms, and it's really not an efficient and effective use of our time. And there's many other cities that have a pretty progressive safety village where it's more than just fire prevention. It's really a life skills program where they learn more about city services, bicycle safety, roadway safety, fire prevention, all of those things rolled into one, and you could come visit that and have specific programming. And having a common location somewhere in town would be ideal for that. Finally, two smaller items that are at the end of your list are the outdoor warning sirens. Those are two. The combined cost is $70,000. I don't know the specific locations of where those are proposed for over the next 10-year period. Yes, those would be new. And then finally, the Fire Station 4 kitchen remodel. That's one of our stations that was probably the 91 or 92 station if it corresponded with Fieldstone. And it's the last one that really hasn't had a commercial makeover. And obviously the kitchens are very busy there just because they're used every single day of the year, multiple times per day, and the number of people there. So
those last two, and these are fine to identify in this process, but the last two of those sirens, the kitchen remodel and really the safe rooms that were talked about, are all ones that also could find their way into operating capital opportunities that they could fit that definition as well. So we will look at that in this process, but also look at that as we develop future budgets and plans there.
Just seeing that about the sirens, the other night, whenever we had bad weather and everything, people, several people have said to me they never heard a siren.
Yeah,
They didn't go off.
they didn't go off.
They did not.
There was an assumption made at the Emergency Communication Center that all of them would go off when they activated it. There's some new supervisory folks in place, and there's actually an activation for the Franklin sirens and an activation for the sirens elsewhere in the county, and both of those processes did not happen at the same time. So it was, sometimes they hold off setting off the sirens in some areas because where the weather is or the nature of the specific storm, but in this instance, they didn't get activated, and there was just it was a training issue with a new supervisor.
I just told everybody that we didn't have the weather. It was down there.
Well, fortunately, it didn't hit us real hard.
That was not it. No,
It was an
as I
error
say,
in the
I had-
system.
Go off.
I had people from a couple of different areas say something to me. Thank you.
All right, let's keep moving.
Sure.
Questions? My only question is, how much facilities tax money? Have you got any information about that?
Closing year end, between 10 and $12 million in fund balance, maybe higher than that. It was another good year regarding that. All of that will be presented, though, in the available amount that you can spend on the 27th. So more than enough to cover Fire Station 7, certainly. And then for us to start entertaining prioritization of either these projects or how they fit in with parks or sanitation.
Stormwater, you're up.
So, same agenda. We'll go over the overall summary, the individual project review, and then talk about each individual project as we go forward.
We are going to review all the projects in stormwater. There just aren't that many of them, and we've had a lot of interest in this area. So, in the other categories, we've done primarily 3 and 4 stars. In this case, we'll just walk through them all. Same thing as we did in the emergency services.
This is the Carton Lane Bridge Replacement Project. It's under construction now, even threw in a picture there so you could see the progress we're making with it. If you don't drive down that cul-de-sac, you never would have noticed it, but they're moving very fast with the project. It's going along very well. The bid price was $256,255.10, and so we're still on track to try to get it paved this year. We're pushing the limit on that with asphalt plants closing in November, but
Yeah, right.
we're still working very hard to try to get that done and get it put back together before the holidays. The stormwater projects total is around $20 million. 11 projects directly funded through the stormwater. One of those ongoing, and the other 10 are proposed, either stream restoration, bank stabilization, culvert replacement, bridge replacement, or just drainage repair. There's also other multiple projects in transportation that have stormwater as a potential funding source associated with it. So we'll go through the individual project review. This is the Jordan Branch project. We did actually bid this project out, and we've bid it out twice. We've not been able to get bidders to bid it because of the complications associated with it. It's very difficult to access. There's a lot of constraints associated with it. And so we've essentially, we're taking a step back, and we have a meeting set up over the next 2 weeks to meet with a few contractors to see what we can do to make it more constructible. Again, this is about 50 acres, drains down through this wet weather conveyance. The banks are extremely eroded, and the trees were kind of falling down on themselves with the majority of the root structure exposed. And so the HOA has complained about this for many, many years. We said we would take a look at it and see what we can do to fix this. And so as soon as we sit down with those contractors and get some feedback, we're hoping for two things. One, to try to bring the price down, but two, to make it easier to construct. One of those items may mean the homeowners dedicating easements so that we can get in and have better access to the trees. So that project continues to move forward.
You looked at me.
I didn't know if you had questions.
No, we'll do that later. I'm fine.
Next
So
project.
Is that a project that we've already allocated funds for as we
We voted.
rank them?
So in the annual budget, we have included funding for that. However, that can always be reprioritized on all the projects as it relates to it. And right now, it's more than likely going to get pushed to the next fiscal year anyways, given the fact that we're having to sit down with these contractors to reevaluate it.
Yeah, we need to figure out what to do because of the trees. Got a lot of problems over there, and we're losing bank area, a lot of bank area, a lot of backyards, and a lot of unsafe conditions over there with larger trees.
So next one is the Maplewood Stormwater Project. It's a 72-inch corrugated metal pipe. It goes between those houses, as you can see on the exhibit. Estimated cost is around $500,000 right now. We're looking at a lining project, more than likely, to line these culverts. And the corrugated metal pipe, the majority of the bottom of it is missing now, and that's pretty typical with corrugated metal pipe. And so to avoid having to dig it up with a transformer located over it this close to the houses, we would basically dig two large pits on either end of it and push a liner through it, and then we grout around it. And that's generally what we're looking at here. This project is essentially ready for bid with a few minor tweaks, and we can move this one forward. At this point, we're just waiting to go through this process to formally allocate the funding to do the replacement. Next project is culvert repair in the Carlisle Homeowners Association. We did get a few complaints from this subdivision. The one house located closest to Highway 96, and I'll point to it real quick, right here, has had water into their crawl space and into their garage multiple times. It appears that the home builder actually built the finished floor elevation in the garage level lower than the street. And so it's going to take a pretty major project for us to go in there and fix this. What we're conceptually talking about is essentially just piping the whole thing in. And it's a wet weather conveyance so that we know we can do that. And again, this is another project that's just waiting on funding to move forward into the design phase and the public engagement. But the homeowners there have asked for this multiple times throughout the years.
And you don't have to bother any yards there, do you?
We're going to bother yards, but the initial culvert installation, there's a tree line there between Founder's Point and the Carlisle Homeowners Association. So that tree line would more than likely have to come out so we can put in storm pipe and catch basins, but it's the only way we've been able to come up with to mitigate the flooding long-term in this subdivision.
Okay. So are you saying it's been in one house?
It's been in one house multiple times, as far as I know. Next project is West Main Bridge Widening Project. Again, we estimate it close to $500,000, a three-star project. We would just simply widen the bridge to allow for pedestrians or some utilities that would need to be moved out of the way to accommodate the larger shoulder, essentially, is what we're proposing. And at this point, it's ready to move forward into a design phase when funding is allocated to it.
How long will this take?
It's a hard question to answer because we don't have a survey. I would say it would take us about a year to get through design and utility relocations. And once we get through the utility relocations, the bridge construction's a few months. It's not gonna take that long. I know there's overhead electric through there, and there's some water and sewer, and that'll be, depending on how easily we can relocate those facilities, will determine how long it takes us to actually deliver this project. Next project is a 100-block Battle Avenue Drainage Improvement project, and we'd looked at multiple options here. I guess where the staff has ended up recommending is looking at a buyout program if the board wants to continue to pursue this project of just purchasing the 2 lots as shown and then turning it into some type of detention pond. There was also the other option of trying to build a regional detention pond, which was like a 15-foot hole in the ground, and we would have to put in a pump station and force main, and it would be more expensive than actually purchasing the 2 houses. This is a project that's been around for many, many years and got worse when the development to the south expanded the storage facility where a lot of the stormwater had been held before.
We've got a couple of speaker cards for that too.
Yeah,
Yeah, if I could, I'll invite Kristen Riddler and Buddy Mills up, and we'll give you a couple of minutes to make a comment.
I don't have a lot to say. As far as update-wise, I just wanted to really reiterate that we were approached last October, so we've been sitting kind of in limbo for this for over a year. The appraisal was done last November. Sorry, I'm getting nervous. We are now at a point in my family where we have roof issues. We need a new roof, and we don't have the money to put a new roof on and find out that we're gonna go through with the project. We're all for the project, for the buyout. If that's what helps the best, we're fine with that. We would just like some sort of resolution to this. When my kids go outside to play, like I said, we did not know. We were told it flooded once in 2010, that it was a result of the storage facility not having properly working pumps. So we moved in with all title work, everything clear, only to find out that we have problems. We've been fortunate. It's not come in the basement at this point, but our backyard has flooded to the point where I actually have a picture of my daughter trying to play outside, and she's got an umbrella, rain boots on, and she's about shin high in water. So I think the only way we feel really comfortable and safe for ourselves and for our neighborhood is to leave that situation, because I don't want to end up in a position where we are in a flooded basement and having to go through, I know what the previous homeowners went through with that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mills?
Yes, I'm Lilburn Buddy Mills, 111 Battle Avenue. Might point out that I've lived there since I was a boy, 1954. Keep getting older. The point is one added benefit of the Battle Avenue buyout, as Mr. Mayor has pointed out in a previous meeting, this really is a 100-block local flooding problem. Even though our homes would be bought out, there is other problems with other homes that were damaged in the flood in 2010. That would be alleviated to a great extent. Also, there's pooling of water in front of 114 and 115 Battle Avenue. There's always a potential liability to the city of a car hydroplaning there. The holding pond, Mr. Holzen points out to me, would be at a lower level than the city. It would be easy enough to put a drain pipe in, he says, and gravity flow the water off Battle Avenue to the holding pond, which is an added plus for this buyout project to reduce a potential city liability problem. Certainly liability lawsuits often are high-dollar lawsuits. Certainly would hope that you will make a decision on this project.
Thank you, sir.
Paul, you're talking about running a drain under Battle Avenue to get to the other side, to drain that little pond, and then drain it over to this side over here then.
Correct. Yeah, that would all be incorporated into it.
Who did the appraisals on the property? Do you know?
It was done by Rhett Turner, who's an independent appraiser. He does a lot of our TDOT work. He used to be the chief appraiser for the Tennessee Department of Transportation. And he's the one that performed the appraisals back in October, I guess, a year ago.
So he appraised the two properties, one at 600 and one at 400?
Correct.
What's, Mr. Mills, your address is 111?
Yes, ma'am.
And Kristen? What is yours?
109.
Okay. And who, and these two in here, are either one of theirs?
Yes, both of those are
Both of
theirs.
them? They're both,
Yes.
okay.
Any more questions on Battle Avenue?
So, question, so we're talking about either taking the house out completely or raising it, correct?
Correct.
Or, so what's the cost factor if you took out the house and did away with the property tax long-term for that property versus the money we spent to take out the house? Raise the house, or the cost of raising the house, what's that one cost versus the
Well,
cost of taking it out completely and going and doing away with the property tax?
They both have basements on them, I believe. I know at least one of them does, so you can't necessarily raise the house. You just convert the
She means-
basement.
Oh, you're not talking about lifting it, you're talking about.
What are the
tearing it down.
options? What are the options? Lift it, you can't if it's basement, correct?
You can't use it to go up a story and a half at least.
And one has a basement, one doesn't, correct? Yours?
Both have
Both.
basements.
Well, then
Yeah,
you can't
one's
raise it.
finished, so you can't raise them, yeah.
So when you say raise, do you mean rise it up?
Well,
or
all you
mean
could do is
get
fill
rid of
the,
it?
you could fill the dirt around
Tear
them.
it down.
All right,
Potentially.
tearing it down.
That's,
All right,
our-
Yeah, tear it
that's
down.
what I want to know. What are we talking about?
And really, to hold the drainage area that drains to this, you would need to pretty much use both lots for the storage,
Uh-huh.
is what we would look at doing. You'd be basically grade a very shallow depression area where it would infiltrate into the ground long-term. If it doesn't infiltrate, we could look at another option to try to get rid of that water. And we also talked about putting some type of an underground system in, so the water sits there, but it would actually sit below ground and not be visible to the neighbors or be a nuisance to the neighbors. So those are the
With
options
the
that we,
houses remaining,
with,
Correct.
no, with the houses removed,
with the houses removed.
with the houses
Total.
removed. We couldn't physically fit it there with the houses remaining.
So you really can't,
That was
That's-
not an option to
that's
us.
not an option to fix it with the houses still there.
Correct.
The only option to fix it with the houses there was where we were actually enlarging the pond at the storage facility and buying a separate property.
Right.
It was just more expensive than this option significantly. It was about $1 million
Oh,
more.
was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the $1.8 million is $850,000 worth of construction and $1 million for the two residences.
About, yeah.
And that's less expensive than
The other option, yes. Yeah,
about $1 million
significantly.
less?
Yeah, the other option was a little over $3 million, I believe.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, keep going.
Next item is the U.S. Army Corps home raising project. And I just checked this with Jonathan, is that it's gone up to around 35 homes now. And we've increased the cost in the CIP book to reflect the revised numbers that we've received from the Army Corps of Engineers. That estimated cost is $4 million, with the city's estimated portion of it being around $1.4 million, which is around $120,000 per house is what that cost is. And so this
That's
is
the total cost.
total
The
cost.
city's portion of that would be about $40,000 a house.
And to be clear, when we say
said
raise, we
120.
mean elevate in this case.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
We talked raised in the last one.
All
which is
right,
different.
yes.
I didn't get that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
elevate.
The other thing, just to remind everybody, the board has approved participation with the Army Corps in this project. The remaining policy question is, to what level, if any, does the board want to participate with local funds? So that Army Corps program provides 65% funding through the Army Corps, and then the balance is what we're talking about here. And this number reflects a full local
Yeah,
share.
this one.
So you could obviously do this project at a lower level if you had a lower participation rate on a local level. So you've got some options here. This project can still move forward. but obviously it's a significant project, and now it's up to 35 homes that have met the cost-benefit threshold per the Army Corps' review.
And I just heard two numbers from you. Can you clarify that? You
So-
said 120 and then you said 40.
You've got a total listed price, estimated cost of $4 million. That's the total cost, 100% cost. And that would be broken down 65% for the Corps of Engineers and 35% to be come up with however the city determines. The 35% would be about $45,000 per house.
I'm
That
sorry,
the-
what?
Excuse me, 40,000 a house, excuse me. 40,000 a house, that would be our share per house.
40,000
That'd be the
a house.
1.4 million divided
That's
by 35.
1.4 million.
Alderman Speedy?
Do we have any examples from other communities that have done this, or any precedents where they've either made it completely voluntary and the citizens are on the hook, or low-interest loans, or some type of cost sharing, any other cities across the U.S.?
I'm guessing everyone's done it differently, but we can reach out to the Army Corps to ask them how other communities have handled this and see if we can get some examples for the last few projects that they've done similar to this.
We need that.
Do we have any indication of how many of the 35 homes are interested in?
We've been
Very
looking
good
more for the
question.
policy direction from the board first before we approach them, but we've not surveyed anybody at this point.
So it depends on policy.
I think there's a bit of a wait and see, what's the city gonna do? And we wanna know that too before we really do a full press on public information and education. So I think that's a hard one for us to fully answer, given the fact that we don't know what we can tell each individual owner about what their situation might be. And even though Jonathan gave you a number per house, it does vary by house, because some are elevated more than others, and there's different considerations on property. So there's some that are less expensive, there's some that'll be more expensive.
Alderman Martin?
What's 35 times 40? 1,000.
1.4 million.
1.4 million is what we would be spending by paying 40,000 per 35 houses.
Correct.
And this came up from, what was it, 2.5 million? Wasn't that the original?
It was somewhere thereabouts. That was when it was originally 20-some odd houses,
1.4 million?
and the Corps has refined their study some.
Other questions, comments?
Oh, yeah.
You ready to keep?
Yeah.
Well,
I'm
that's
sorry?
fine. Is there anybody that wants to speak to this, or they just
I don't
here?
have any speaker
Okay,
cards.
okay.
If,
Well, you know, we have talked about this quite a number of times. I do think that the number of people, or the number of homeowners that would be interested, you know, who knows what that is, really. And so they're just saying, if all 35 homes participated, it would be 4 million. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And depending upon what houses, though, did participate, would depend on how much money that they would give. They're just maxing out at 4 million, right?
Well, from our prioritizing on, as far as the top 10 projects, whatever, we need to prioritize the participation rate for the city to understand whether or not we wish to go 35%, 65%. If it's 35, 25, 10, or something other like that, then that makes a difference on what we spend,
The dollar impact.
makes a difference on how we prioritize on this list also, so.
Anybody else?
Well, I
And
did
in
notice
terms
that,
of your initial prioritization, I guess I would just prioritize the project generally.
Okay.
When we get into more specific discussions around projects, and this is a little different because it's a
yes, it is.
bigger policy discussion, and as I said, tomorrow night, we're gonna give you an overview and a more complete review of the fund itself and the financial position of that fund. So, I think when you rate this, just rate it as generally the general project, at least on this initial priority group, because on this initial priority, we're not constraining it by dollar amounts anyway. So just talk about, I guess, rate it in terms of how important you think the project is in terms of impact.
And if you notice here on that page that they have an estimated cost, I guess that would be city cost, to raise this to the 100-year plus 3 height.
On page 230.
Right there. It says height to, oh, I'm sorry, that's the height to 100, and the, yeah. I'm sorry, and then they got the first, they've got, as I say, looking at this, you see it's kind of all over everywhere in terms of how much each one would cost. That's my, I should say. Maybe the amount raised might be.
Yeah,
more
the column
appropriate
showing
one.
the actual cost is not shown in that
That's what I
exhibit.
mean, but the
Yeah.
amount raised, I should.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just the height.
Yeah, the height raised, I should have said.
That's
Instead
what
of
that
the,
pink is?
That's what the
Yeah.
pink is, the
Pink.
height you would raise the structure.
Say height.
yeah.
Some are going up to almost 11 feet, and some are as little as 4 feet.
Okay. Wow.
Raise-
10 feet, 10 feet is
Significant.
And if you want to know what that
significant.
looks like, you can drive down Old Liberty Pike and see several houses that are raised significantly.
Yeah, there's one
Oh,
there.
that's
it's gotta
right.
be 10.
That's a
So
good
if you want
point.
to know what they look like, there's several there.
Good
So there's
point.
several brand new ones that were built that high, so.
Okay, next project is Ralston Creek at Liberty Hills, stream restoration project. We just had a public meeting on this, but the intent behind this project is simply to restore the bank where it has failed right in this area. This house homeowner has complained multiple times of lost almost their entire backyard. If you go look at it, it's in pretty bad condition. We've tried to do some repairs to it, and even those repairs have failed, and that's where we took a step back to try to find out a more engineered solution to do an improvement that would hold up long-term. We also studied the floodplain through here, and right now this is an unmapped flood area, although our modeling shows the floodplain does extend up into this area, which will be a future discussion that we'll have with the board. But we looked at options of what could we do with the existing detention pond there, or the retention pond, if there's a way to decrease storm flooding downstream, if we were to lower the inlet outlet structure or create more storage, and unfortunately there were no solutions that had a positive impact on downstream property owners. So right now, we're looking at just trying to move forward simply with a stream restoration project to restore those banks there, and that would be it. So we estimate this costs right now at about $350,000.
From the beginning to the end of that blue line?
Basically,
thing?
that would be the extent of the project, and we'd meet
Alright.
with those property owners, and if they wanted the project, we'd continue to work with them, but they'd have to donate us easements to get in there and restore that bank. But if they didn't want to participate, we could stop it sooner.
Well, the problem up there, they've all got, they all have problems, but that one house there, that you pointed out, they're losing significant backyard, so when you have 2 stars on this thing and it's only $350,000, I think we need to move up the stars to 4 on that, because you've got somebody's backyard disappearing every rainstorm they have.
Yeah, we could definitely take a look at that. It's
So,
an important project,
I just
especially.
would say to the alderman, when you're looking at this, I think 2-star, I think it should be a 4-star. And, I mean, we were talking millions of dollars here, but we're talking $350,000. I think that's very doable, and to at least save somebody's backyard there.
Just to make something about numbers, are you talking about maybe 10 houses here? And four times that would be the amount of money that we're talking about to spend on all of the elevating of homes? And it's almost 4 times as many houses. I mean, if you're just looking at numbers, as I say, 4 times the $350,000 would be 1.4 million, wouldn't it? It would.
About the same amount per home.
Well, that was one of the 2 points that I was gonna make. And I don't think you do a 2-star rating based upon the cost of the project. I
Yeah.
think you based it upon
No.
the significance of the project.
Exactly.
And not necessarily because of the cost.
Yeah, and this,
If I'm
And
gonna,
there's- and there's a
rate,
lot to
if
this.
I'm
There's
gonna
a lot
rate,
to
then I'm
this.
gonna go down and pick up the $60,000, I'll make it a 5-star
Yeah.
project and, bump it up. That might not be the most important project that we've got going, so.
And the way we ranked the projects was based off of the strategic plan.
Right.
And we had certain questions that we asked ourselves, and then we gave it a point system that ultimately helped us determine if it was a 1, 2, 3, or 4-star project.
It just allowed us to be objective when we were given the initial rankings.
Yeah,
But I do agree with Ann that if you do 35 homes for 1.2, and you've got 1 or 2, 3 or 4, what have you got here for 350,000? There is a,
It's a similar per home cost.
it is. Well, I just want to be clear, if I may, just clarify that when I pointed that out, you know, you originally said score upon impact. So, I know that we've walked this area a couple times now, and backyards are disappearing in here. And these are gonna continue to, and then the first home is probably, could literally lose everything in their backyard, because that's creeping up much closer than this line looks right now to me. I was shocked when I walked back there and went, wow.
Yeah,
As
it's
How many
I
more
say,
rain
this is,
zones?
as we've talked about, it's a very complicated
It is.
thing here.
But
I mean,
I think
I'm
the
just looking
impact,
at numbers.
You know, and I wouldn't, you know, say that, you know, the stars and everything, just the impact.
All right, keep going.
Next project is the Parkview Drainage Project. We spoke a little bit about South Margin last time, where the water and sewer needs to be replaced. This project can only happen if stormwater infrastructure eventually goes in on South Margin Street, but this area has 30 to 50 acres that drain to it. It's been flooding forever since these houses were built. There's just no stormwater infrastructure. A lot of the infrastructure was up behind these houses, and when these houses or the land subdivided and the houses were built, it just simply really highlighted the problem. So this is it's only a 1-star project because you can't do it today. We'd really have to wait and have kind of like a phase 2 to the South Margin project. But this is an area problem, and it has been at least ever since I've been here, and from what I hear, it dates back to the 70s. So around $2.2 million to basically redo the streets, the utilities, and the storm drainage.
May I say something?
Absolutely.
This is my ward. This is my neighborhood. I grew up here. And as much as I love it, I cannot believe that those houses were allowed to be built, knowing that it was always water was going to always stand there. So that is not, as much as I love it, it's not going to be my top priority. And people knew, I mean, they are new houses right there on one side. The others are, some of them are new, some of them have been there, but everybody knew that was going to flood.
You're referring to the houses on Evans Street.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Clarify, because it looks
I'm
like-
sorry.
Yeah, well, I'm just clarifying.
Well, it
because-
comes down Park, crosses Folks, goes under Folks, and right on down.
and one small comment when you were taking this into consideration, Carter's Court added to that.
Yeah.
When
runs
it was,
right
when it
down.
was built in the
Gosh, when was
70s or
that?
whatever it was.
Yeah.
You've got it, that's the head of this. And so you've got additional drainage issues off of that, so. And I'm not saying that does anything other than just add a little bit of documentation to what you've got here, and is what is, Margaret is saying, we've allowed the houses to be built back here, we've also allowed Carter's Court. So it probably 40 years ago wasn't as bad as it is now.
That's just a river down there now, coming out the back of Carter's Court.
Next project is over by the Fairgrounds Drainage Improvement Project. Basically, this old storm pipe here sticks out, and there used to be that depression right here, and it used to drain into this depression. Well, when the storage facility was built, now it just drains into this depression and has nowhere to drain. So we'd look at this as being a separate project or happening sometime along Columbia Avenue's timeframe where we upgrade the infrastructure there, but we could upgrade this infrastructure to give it some positive drainage, which provides additional relief there. I think it's a project we need to do long-term. It probably makes sense to wait until after Columbia Avenue infrastructure gets put in place. but this is definitely needed as well.
Does that have any positive impact also on the 100-block Battle Avenue drainage project?
It'll definitely help, but the
Won't
two
hurt
are
it,
not,
will it?
yeah, the two are not relying on each other. And that ends the stormwater section, unless there's any other questions that you have.
All right, so are any of those projects that you named some that we ought to leave off our list? They
The
all
only
go on the
one would be
list.
the one that's underway, the Carton Lane project. That's already
Okay.
awarded and in process. The other 10 are open for your prioritization.
Okay. Ready to move on? General services.
Brad would be here.
Okay.
Okay, Brad is hopefully gonna stick around for that, but
We can walk through those.
we'll hit him.
Brad's here.
Come on up, Brad. You can be part of
All
the.
right.
Nobody sees me.
Be a visible man.
Wherever you sat, remember that spot.
You're definitely
That's my
visible
blind
now, though,
spot.
Brad.
You can hear me.
Okay, so we'll run through the general services projects really briefly. First project that's underway, is the board had approved some funding for the municipal services complex. What we're looking at doing here is if the funding was initially for replacing and repairing a lot of the asphalt that's damaged out there. We're also looking at what improvements we can do to the existing stormwater drainage system that they're having some problems with. And then there's also been some discussion and a need to try to connect the water line from Shadow Green over to Century Court to help with redundancy and help with flow issues out there. And so we've bundled all those issues up, and right now we're working on a phase 1 project really to try to address the drainage, get the infrastructure put in place, rehab the pavement that makes sense associated with that, with the next phase really to look at the stormwater and then also the resurfacing, long-term surfacing of that lot. And a lot of with all the large trucks and the twisting and turning, a lot of that asphalt is just totally deteriorated. And so sections of it, we'd look at going back with a very thick, heavy-duty concrete section. And so we're meeting on that in the next 2 weeks to try to look at what that first phase really looks like.
So you included some funding for this project in the 2017 bond issue. And so we're definitely going to use that, but we're going to need to augment that funding to do this phase 2 work. And as Paul did a great job of describing all the elements, but to keep that complex functioning well long-term, these improvements are going to be necessary. So we're looking at how to best use that first portion of funding and then how we add a phase 2 component. But I would expect we'll put that in there. The Sanitation and Environmental Services Fund does pay that debt service.
Okay, so then we'll go through the remainder of the general fund projects. There's 4 projects total. The one ongoing, the municipal service complex we just spoke about, 2 downtown parking projects, and then we can, Brad can talk a little bit about City Hall.
City Hall, we are currently.
Not yet, sorry.
Calm down,
First, First project.
Spot first.
Got that parking first.
First project is the Fifth Avenue parking lot. We own this property and purchased it as part of the Hillsborough Road project. It's about $500,000 to go in there and resurface. Right now, it's just a gravel lot. It's something that makes sense. It can be used for parking. We actually talked about trying to designate this as a bus parking area and updating the website so when tour buses show up, they can drop people off wherever they need to in the downtown area and possibly come over to this area and park short-term or long-term.
Did something just come out
I
about
sent you
that?
something
Yeah,
on that
today,
over the
right?
weekend, yeah.
So we're
We
gonna-
reached out to CVB to let them know that this is a good option for those.
So along with our parking website, we'll try to update that to try to keep it out there, that information available.
This is just south of French's Boots on Hillsborough.
It's where the little building is we tore down about a year ago.
Yeah, this was acquired in the Fifth Avenue Hillsborough projects, streetscape projects, updates.
Now I'll let Brad talk a little bit about the new City Hall.
Are you sure?
It's your turn now.
City Hall, currently what we're in the process of doing with is I'm working with James Kennan with the Architectural Workshop to acquire some information from existing City Hall departments in regards to staffing, square footage that they currently are working in, and what we would look to be able to get to. Also with that, so within the let me go back. So within the next couple of weeks, hopefully that document will be put all together. I'll be meeting with the department heads and other staff. We'll be meeting with outside sources as well, with the board itself to kind of get some comments in regards to a new future City Hall and what you're looking for. And then we will look to get that information to the Architect Workshop. And then the Architect Workshop will be looking to get a meeting with at least the current City Hall staff to be discussing their current needs and where we are. But also during all of that as well, we're looking at, or I'm looking at, how do I develop the end of the existing City Hall so that we can put staff down there temporarily while, if we should build a new facility where we currently sit.
So this project, I would personally rate this much higher than a 2-star rating, so I just put those 2 cents in. I think it is important that we look at it, but this also has implications for this entire 4-acre block that the city owns, especially as we anticipate going vertical, multi-story with City Hall, that could free up more of this block for either redevelopment, be it private redevelopment or additional parking or a combination of both. There are opportunities for other things to happen that could offset the cost or add other community benefit. So that's one of the things we'll be looking hard at and need to look at strategically as we look at it. The other component I think that is important for us is having a sense of the time frame for us to move from this building into a new facility, because Brad does a great job and his team does a great job of kind of making it work, but at a certain point we got to know what our time frame is, because certain investments don't make sense if you're going to be moving on to a new facility in a certain time window. So I think this is a very important project, but also one that we need to get develop amongst us sort of a sense of what that time frame should be, needs to be, and then we can, I think, plan accordingly, both from a project implementation, but also what we do with what we've got until that happens, if that makes sense.
Well, I'm not sure how we prioritize, but for me to prioritize this and the new facility set on the entire 4 acres and not be multi-storied and not have part of the other acreage open up for some private development or something or other else other than just City Hall is not going to be high on my priority list. I'm not going to take up the whole area here to do a City Hall.
Right.
If we want to do a 2-3-story City Hall, the same height that the new bank building is over here or whatever it is, but you got to look at that, because I'm not gonna do that, because I think this property is much, much, much too valuable to have a 4-acre City Hall down here as it is right now. This is unique and valuable property, and so we need to be looking, I think I need to be looking, or hopefully I need to be looking at a conceptual plan that then, if it's a conceptual plan that I can appreciate, then I can go back and look at the $24 million and do the appropriation on that. But those blank buildings, which one of them is the bank and one of them is the garage anyway, so it's not even, it's not even part of it. But do you understand?
Yeah.
You understand what?
So these,
Yeah.
the existing, right, this would be First
That's the bank.
Tennessee,
That's the
parking, and then
garage.
these other elements could be something else.
Something else.
That's what we're looking for at City Hall. That's your area. That's currently your Second Avenue parking garage.
Right.
In the bank building. So you've got, and how we master plan this, except that little piece right there, how we master plan this area here and how we develop it. You know, part of our concept drawings that we've looked at has been parking garages. It's been white build-out sections, tenant build-out. Even in City Hall, right there, some of this area that's showing green on how it's designed there, it's white build-out. It's spaces that's available. We're looking at spaces that we can make available that can possibly be leased or rented by a group or a mom and pop that want to
Yeah.
open up something within this structure. So it's not just the entire area as a city hall site.
But your point is well taken.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
that's
Oh,
part,
yes.
this is a more, there are more facets to this than just building a city hall.
Yes.
And understanding how those could work together is a big
Big,
part of this,
big,
and understand it. And it does have the opportunity to offset that $24 million price tag.
and that's
depending
part
on
of
the
the,
value
and that's
that you
part of the
achieve
comment.
from,
And we talked about that.
right.
Some years ago.
So that's something for us to, something for us to try to continue to develop as a unique component of this project.
Alderman Martin.
I would hope that whatever we look at, that we would think about the city retaining ownership of this property, for whatever it's used for. Because when we get rid of it and we need it, it will no longer be available to us. And I think we must really be very conscious of that. Also, I like the way you've got some green space in there. I assume that's what that green is. And that's very important in this particular area, not to fill every space with concrete.
Correct.
And also, tell me who your architect is.
The architectural workshop, headed up by James Kennan. He has worked on other projects with us in the city, and he also was involved with the past facilitating bid that was developed about 10 years ago when Eric and I first started with the city, and we worked with Crosland
Yeah, okay.
Industries, so he was involved with that as well.
Okay. All right, I don't know who did the bank, but it's well done.
It's a beautiful job.
And I would think we don't want downtown Baghdad in this spot.
Our only programming right now is just with the facilitation of a new facility through the architect workshop. They are not currently our architect. We will be looking to pick that architect once we get to that point.
Alderman Burgess.
So in the back, when we talked about residential and parking, I would agree that we need to make use of this site the best we can. And I would agree with Alderman Martin, we retain the lease on the land and don't give up the land lease in case 50 years down the road, somebody wants that land, needs it for the city. In the back, Brad, when we talk about possible residential and parking garages, they could be in tandem. Because you can have, you can have a parking
Harper
garage,
Square.
just like,
Harper Square.
well, yeah, and Joe Parks is doing a development down on McEwen, and he's got a wrap on two sides that are residential, and then the parking garage that's attached to it, and then when you drive up to the level, and you drive right up to your level. That's very much in play today in a lot of developments. So I think we can have the best of both worlds down there. I think we can have residential and we can have parking in tandem with each other. And the other thing is, do we have any idea what we're using as what we're putting out? Do you have any idea what we're putting out in money for City Hall to fix our problems or issues and the needed maintenance per year around here? I mean, because that's money we're spending to keep this place up, not just to keep it up, but I mean, fixing the problems that come with the aging building.
We just recently, within the last 120 days, spent roughly $20,000 to $30,000 on a roof patch.
Okay.
On a roof, to replace a roof on this facility alone, we're looking at $1.5 to $1.9 million.
Yeah.
To do a roof on
Which
it.
we cannot do. So are we going to, that's the other question then, I agree. This needs to be a 5-star right here because the need of, the problem I have is throwing good money after bad all the time in this building. And it's never going to end, and it's always going to increase. Year after year after year, it's going to increase. And I'm really worried about the roof because we can't afford to put a roof on this place and then build City Hall. I mean, that would be a very unwise decision. And so are we going to be able to continue to patch it and carry it along enough so that we can get by? So that's not going to last forever. And so I think our stars here are, what is it you said? The impact?
We're doing what we can currently just to keep it dry. We're buying the material now that that the roofing companies have been making and doing repairs with. We're now buying it by the 5-gallon pails. And we're spending that $800 to whatever for material to do what we
Yeah.
need to do just to kind of keep it moving along.
Yeah.
But one thing that I'll say to you as a group and to you is that on our team with the architectural workshop, we have an economist that is part of that programming. So he'll be able hopefully to give us some information on the value of our property and maybe how they see it in regards to leasing rates and
Good.
property rates down here. Because it's not just the residential aspect that you bring in as well, it's the commercial aspect that brings us the sales tax dollars and
Right.
stuff in. So,
Yeah.
so we're trying to, with the team that we've been working with the planning department, engineering and others, and Eric and the mayor, you know, we've kind of bounced some things off.
That was gonna be my last question, if we had any forecasting. So,
Yes.
yeah, okay. Good.
Okay. Other comment?
One more project.
One more project?
Yeah.
Next project is a new public parking lot or structure or some type of a surface lot. We estimated around $8 million for this. This
That's all.
exhibit came from the
More than that.
parking study. Basically, you can see the two garage locations in a reasonable distance to walk. The exact location of this has not been determined. We would envision that whatever this is it would start off as some type of a surface lot and then have the ability to go to some type of a structured lot long-term for the city. Or we'd look to do some type of public-private partnership on some existing lots that are out there to be able to try to accommodate future parking in the downtown area. So with
Is
that
it-
said,
Is it
that's,
still about $30,000 a parking spot?
it's, yeah, about $25,000 to $30,000 a parking spot is generally what we've seen or heard
Structure.
in structured
So
parking.
you could get about 250 for that price? Or more, a little bit more?
Mayor, one
I'm
comment.
sorry, Alderman Barnhill, go ahead.
Backing up, I was waiting to see if we had anything else. On that Fifth Avenue surface parking,
Mhm.
just look at where the old transfer station it was too. Because, I mean, now you could pick up 15 or 20 parking places pretty easily there. I mean, we've torn the shell down. We have not torn the concrete structure down. So that ties in straight across from Bicentennial Park also. So I would include that into that area right in there, unless somebody has some objections to that.
That was kind of our backup location, was the Hill property,
Okay,
in
yeah.
the temporary, yeah.
We'll take a look at it.
Alderman Speedy?
Just curious, I guess, in these Dickens and Pumpkin Fest events, I mean, do we have people parking as far, I guess, way as Pinkerton, the HD Hill property? And
We've had
they
people
have shuttles,
park at
right?
Church
No?
of the City and come
Church of
in.
the City shuttle?
Yeah, that
Shuttle
happens, yeah. And then we'll use again now that it's been more restored, is we've used Harlansdale as a satellite parking too for events. So, we do try to do that with those events because there's so many people that come in, but it's a challenge. Parking's always a challenge.
Margaret, do you charge for parking in those events?
No, they can park free in my yard.
I thought she was selling
Uh-oh.
parking at the mayor's house.
I
She's
said
been
that
collecting money from my house whenever she
Yeah.
parks somewhere. Alderman Peterson?
Just to think of a couple of other things. You know, right now, the construction people are parking out in areas and everything that could be used for parking unless we decided to do more with it, you know, and everything. And I've been some places where they had some parking, it was surface though, of course, but then they had kind of, you know, how we're having transit, you know, going out all the way out to Church of the City, not thinking transit or anything like that. But they had little at least little, you know, kind of trolleys and shuttles and something like that, where the people came in to the main street in downtown. And as I say, I've seen that in some other areas and everything, and thought about that, especially, you know, if you're thinking temporarily. But there were places where a lot of people came, you know, certain times of the year. I could tell that. But with us, you know, people that work downtown might be happy to have a little shuttle or something, bringing them to the main street, I'll put it that way.
Good point. A restaurant like Gray's has like 85 or 90 employees, I think.
employees
See,
especially.
that's
would be-
And I don't know
Yeah.
how many are in this building,
Mhm.
but a significant number also.
Mhm.
But if they were coming at a certain time and needed to be there, you know, at a certain time and everything, that might be
Mhm.
helpful to think about, something like that.
Okay. Any other questions? What's next?
Well, it really just summarizes where we are. We've done, we finished our breakout meetings where we've worked through the specific project categories and appreciate all your patience and dedication getting through all those. 143 projects is a lot of projects. We've touched on a lot of them, not maybe every single one in terms of discussion, but quite a few of them and all of the higher ranked projects. Really on this last piece, we'll probably send out in the next day or so a final prioritization. And it looks like just because of the sheer number of projects, small number of projects in the other areas, and that there's only 10 stormwater projects,
Yeah,
I'm thinking I will ask you maybe for a top 5 in stormwater. That might help us. And we'll have some more discussion tomorrow night about what your options look like in terms of stormwater projects and how we can get those done. And that's a broader discussion, and we'll have implications in our budget development as well. And as I had referred to earlier too, we'll come to you on November 27th in the work session and do the financial model overview and talk about where we are there. And then from there, look for your direction on timing and how we do a more global prioritization for the general projects. And I anticipate doing it somewhat the way we did it last time, which is we laid out a dollar amount. We may even lay out a couple tiers of dollar amounts and ask you to prioritize within a dollar allocation. I thought that was very helpful last time. These other priorities within the categories is helpful as well, but we'll work with you on how we do that, but I wouldn't expect that we would get all the way through that till the first part of 19, probably in January, with the holidays and everything coming up. But from there, we'll start to really focus in on what this next tier of projects looks like. So give you the model in November, and then use December and January to think about and get the at least the first crack at prioritization done, and then work towards some decision first part of 19, and we've anticipated spring of 19, looking at the potential of moving forward with the 2019 bond sale that would tie to these projects. We're trying to get on a pattern where we're doing that every other year and tying in your capital program with that. So that's really where we are, and thank you for your time and effort on this. I want to thank Paul and Jonathan and Michael and all the departments that have worked on this to bring information to you. I hope this has been helpful.
How do you want these rated now? We're gonna do the top 5 for the stormwater.
I'm just going to
How
probably
about
just send you the
emergency?
there's such
Yeah.
a small number of the other projects.
And then how about
I'm not
emergency
sure they're
service
worth
in
it.
general?
Yeah,
How about
thank
the other 2?
There's just so few of them. I'm not sure that it's worth prioritizing.
For emergency services?
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
just, I mean,
And
there's
then
just,
general services as well?
there's only 3 projects
Yeah.
in that
Yeah,
group.
see.
So I just think we'll get to those when you look at the broader,
Yeah.
broader priorities.
Yeah.
The other ones, there are just so many in the transportation category and even in parks that it was helpful to get a sense of what was most
So
important to
just
you
stormwater.
so that we could look at other opportunities beyond what may come out of the whole process.
So
So
you'll send us something on stormwater?
we'll send you something, yes.
Right.
Alderman Martin.
At several meetings ago, Bev had a good suggestion that we, as aldermen, express what we feel. And, yeah, to the board, because we don't ever get a chance to talk about. Well, yeah, but even
Or
some,
each other,
here's one that is not in my ward, but I would like to promote the Battle Avenue, because that has been sitting there for a long time. Those people, Buddy and Kristen and their families have been waiting for some kind of answer, and we brought it up to them. And that project could help alleviate the problems in that area by developing a holding pond for that water. So I would like for that to be on my priority list. But number one, of course, is the bridge. You know, the bridge, it doesn't look like much, it doesn't look like much on this paper, but it is the way that the people on this side of town can get to downtown, and otherwise they cannot do it safely. And so that would be the top of my priority list. This Battle Avenue thing would be next, and as I say, Evans Street is really important to me, but that can come at the end of it for me, because those people knew on the front end that that water stood. And if they didn't, they weren't listening. They would be my priorities, my top priorities. And then when we see how much money we have left, if we want to talk about raising 35 houses, then we can talk about that and see what we have left. I just don't know what that would leave us.
One of the things we've talked about internally too, especially with the West Main Bridge widening, because you're not really replacing a bridge there, you're widening a bridge for transportation purposes, you may consider funding that from a different source than stormwater.
Well, I thought that's what we were doing to start with, and then you all told me we had to do the stormwater thing.
Well, and with any of the stormwater projects, as you look at them, one of the things we'll talk about tomorrow is you can augment it or fold in general fund capital to do more if you value those projects. There's only so much capacity in that fund as it stands today, but if you see 2 or 3 projects that you think are of significant value, you can put those in the broader prioritization too.
Well, you can do that with any of them.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
so anytime you want to pull out a project out of a specific funding, you put it in the general fund, for the lack of a better term, and you fund it in that direction then. So that's let's see, that was $400 and something thousand for that
Yes.
bridge
About
across
half a
there?
Wow.
I offered to fix it myself.
You did? For
And-
$450,000?
She was gonna have a
No,
bank,
for
bank
nothing.
off.
Oh, for nothing, oh, that's right,
For nothing.
Yeah, you're gonna
And
bulldozer.
Paul would not accept that.
Bulldozer. Paul, you didn't turn that
You
down, did
didn't,
you?
you just looked
You-
the other way.
Doesn't meet code now.
Yeah, so what the heck, right?
Miss Margaret wanted 650 for it, so we just couldn't accept it.
She's gonna go hold some big seals. I've got a
I've got
question.
Alderman Peterson
Okay, go.
first, and I'll take you, Alderman Burke.
Sure.
Well, you know that on the stormwater, I really think that we have the opportunity to use the FEMA money, and it is the first time that we have ever had that opportunity. And I would like to strongly consider that. And it is in your ward, Margaret.
What?
A lot of it in the,
Oh,
in
I know
the-
that.
uh-huh.
I know
Well,
that.
a lot of it, not all of it, because there's also some in Dana's, you know, and everything. But as I say, it's an opportunity that we have never had before. I don't know how many people might want to participate in that. I really wonder if very many would, if they had to pay the extra 35% themselves. I mean, you know, it's not that kind of situation where probably very many people could afford to do that. And so that is something to consider there. And as I say, it's kind of a one-shot opportunity for us. That's not going to come, well, it hasn't come around since, you know, they flooded 40 years ago or 8 years ago. And so it's the first time that's happened. And actually, I believe the Corps of Engineers picked Franklin out of the Brentwood, whatever county, and the city of Franklin, that we're the only ones that have the opportunity here. So that is something to think about.
Alderman Speedy?
I guess I would
Let's
advocate
see,
for
I'm
the-
sorry, I had Alderman
No,
Berger,
go
then
ahead.
I'll.
Go ahead. Fine.
Yeah, I was gonna just, I guess, advocate for Battle Avenue as well. I mean, those are homeowners have kind of been in limbo. I think we probably had approved it and we're gonna fund it, and then obviously we ran across a lot more stormwater issues, and, you know, they can't make changes to the house. They really are in
Right.
limbo, so I'd kind of be in favor of approving that one. The FEMA raising of the homes, that's a tough one for me because it is a voluntary program. I guess I would be more in favor of looking to even, if we had people who couldn't fund it, if we did a low-interest loan type project. You know, there's a lot of options there, but again, it's a voluntary program, and
Well, let me ask you, though, in the Battle Avenue, it's 1.8 million, and it's voluntary, you know, in the sense that
I'm
Those
just
people
saying, yeah,
decided.
but I think that's an issue where probably the storage facility contributed to that. They're not living next to the river. I think it's a little bit different.
And the veterinarian place also.
Mm,
The storage facility and
And
the
the
vet,
vet.
and the vet
and the
o-
vet.
off of Columbia Avenue filled in
oh, I
on
know
the
what, I
back
know what
side
you're
of
talking
that.
about.
So
that
you've
other
got two
part, yeah.
issues in that area, storm,
Yeah.
the storage facility, and that, I don't know who runs the veterinarian place now, but I know who filled it in. And, so there's two issues there.
Alderman Berger, you want to close us out?
Sure. So when we get sent this, is Jordan Branch even going to be on here since we've already voted to do this?
It will be on
We
there,
haven't
yes.
voted, we haven't voted to fund it.
It is
though.
not a funded project, so it will be
So
on
it will
there.
be on there?
Mhm,
Okay.
Yes.
So we've got all the bids, we're ready to go to work, but we can't get anybody to give us bids twice out. So we've got to figure out what to do, because we've done all this work, we spent all this money, we have the consultants, we've got the HOA on board, we've got the people on board, and we're like at a standstill because we can't figure out how to get this done. And gosh, you gotta think there's a company somewhere that can come in here and do this thing, but anyway, it's on our list. And then, I'm sort of with the Ralston Creek. Yeah, because, you talk about impact, I think this is gonna continue to have a really bad impact on these yards in the back. As I said, that one house is losing, like today, they'll lose some more. I mean, it just crumbles in. Lady looks out the window and goes, is my backyard still there or not? And so, the impact here, I think, is pretty significant on Ralston Creek. And I agree with everybody else on all your other comments that you've made. I agree with yours, Scott, on the, things too, and Margaret. Yep.
As far as all the emergency services, you all know about that. Oh, we don't know what emergency is more important than the other.
Well, so
I
many of
would
those
leave
are
that up
driven
to you
by
all.
development and
Exactly.
annexation. That's kind of why I didn't think that made sense to
Yeah.
have you prioritize that, because that's to be aware of, it's good
Yeah,
planning,
exactly.
but it's, other decisions you make on the development side are gonna impact the necessity for those, many of those facilities.
But $15 million into an area that we haven't even annexed yet.
Right.
Right.
We're
It's
not
not
gonna do
on my
that.
priority
No,
list.
that's right. Yeah.
No, but if you take a look at those and say, what is out of that list? I mean, what do we've got a 4, the Safety Education Village, and that's important to educate children on safety and whatever goes along with that, but I look at these other ones and
Well,
think.
it's all important, but they know what we need more than.
Yeah, but, what was the other one? There was, well, the warning signs. To me, that's, hello. I think that's like
That's
right
gonna
up
probably
there.
fall in an operating budget.
Yeah, but
That's
that-
not something you're gonna put in your
Yeah.
multi-million-dollar,
Right.
10-year CIP.
But
We're gonna
that's-
probably find a way to do that.
Yeah, but that's
and
pretty
piece
important,
that
because
together
it's
and-
a huge safety thing too as well, you know, so, yeah.
All right, last comment.
On the warning signs too, would that have been tied into our cell phones? Because at times I would have gotten a warning.
Yeah.
Yeah, that should have happened on
Should've
cell
gone on.
phones, and I got it,
Didn't
and
go.
my daughter didn't. I can't explain what happened
Okay,
with
so I didn't
that,
know
yeah.
if that, was that,
Yeah.
that glitch wasn't tied to the.
Interesting.
I don't know
cell
what
I
that
didn't
was.
get
That
it.
was a system,
You got
broader system issue. That wasn't on the emergency side or the public side, from everything I know. But I got it, other family members didn't, we're on the same
In
plan.
defense,
I
my
don't know.
brother and mom tried to call me, but I went to bed at 10:15. You were sleeping, so I slept through it.
We're over.
All right.